Welcome back for step 2 of the case. If you want to review the case notes, go ahead and click on the button there. Otherwise, I will jump in right here. Using the sponsor's word, the outcome is stated as wear on heavy equipment parts is improved to meet manufacturer's stated expectations. One of the suggestions was to state the outcomes using the sponsor's words. I conducted the needs assessment and have confirmed the findings with the sponsor. Using the ABCD approach, what should I write for terminal objectives? Just like last time, if you want to take this as an opportunity, you can pause the video on PowerPoint. Pressing S pauses it. Otherwise, we will continue. These are the 5 options that I'm looking at. Feel free to press S and pause to mark your answers. I'll give 3 seconds as you consider. Continuing on, the choice that I made is the first one. Just quickly, I'll mark down the selections that I made. For the ABCD, the audience are the mechanics, the lubricate is the behavior, the actions they'll take. In my opinion, this may be a bit weak, but I see this as the condition that they would have heavy equipment, and then all of the rest here would be the degree of mastery, keeping the contamination less than 1,000 per cubic centimeter each time. So if you're just following along with the case, feel free to stop there. The main things that I'll talk about continuing on that were in this section having to do with outcomes and objectives are that they distinguished outcomes from objectives. The outcomes are written for the sponsors, that how to write terminal and enabling objectives, and consulting Bloom's taxonomy and using a format, and there are a couple examples for that. If you want to continue on with me, stay on. So the 3 things that we'll look at moving forward are what is the difference between outcomes and objectives, what are the 3 domains and 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy and how to use those with objectives, and then what are 2 formats that can be used for. Outcomes were distinguished from objectives. Most prominently, I saw in the outcomes are written for the sponsors. So they are drawn almost directly from that needs assessment, and that's one of the reasons that I started with that, is that they indicate the result to the organization from the learning. So they're written in a way that it states what the organization gains from it, and they're the specific outputs that individuals are expected to achieve. So in the choices from the multi-choice, I would see the B as more of an outcome. The objectives are written for the learners, and they identify the knowledge and skills that learners are going to use to perform tasks. Those tasks lead to the outcomes, and the way that they are written are meaningful for the learners. And there are a hierarchy of objectives. So we'll talk about that next. In the hierarchy, the terminal objectives are at the top, and they are what the learners must master by the end of the course. The enabling objectives are those building blocks that lead to the terminal objectives, and they're written in the same way, but they're kind of at the more micro level, and since they're the building blocks, essentially once they are completed, the students would be able to complete the terminal objectives. So looking at the other options in the multi-choice, I would see C, D, and E, being able to read the lubrication test, being able to identify the top 3 causes, being able to identify the impact, that those are all things that would enable them to be able to do what they need to do at the end of the course, to be able to lubricate keeping the contamination to the degree that they need to. Bloom's taxonomy is heavily used for writing objectives, and his taxonomy is broken up into 3 domains: knowledge, skills, and attitude, and then 6 levels in those domains. Knowledge, skills, and attitude are called by a different name in the 2.1 section: cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. Identifying the domain that you'll be training in is also very useful for determining that it is a training issue. Using the human performance model, an issue that was addressed is that the driver may not be training, may not be knowledge and skills. It could be motivation, it could be lack of resources, or something else. And the needs assessment is when that would come out. But if it is knowledge, skills, or attitude, and it is going to be a training solution. Looking at the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, this was largely what the TDBoK discussed, and to be honest, it's largely what my education has focused on, the 3 domains and the 6 levels. And as I looked a little bit further into this, I realized that Bloom's work, Bloom and his colleagues, focused this only to describe the cognitive domain. So the way that I use this in practice is divide up the learning objectives and then use verbs like these to stack so that the learning progresses. And then what was valuable for me to look at a little bit closer is how their taxonomy also filled out different levels for the affective. And feel free to pause it on here, but I won't spend too much time on this because this wasn't in the TDBoK and I don't want to extend the time in the video, but feel free to pause. And then Bloom actually didn't discuss the psychomotor domain. He explained that it was there, but in their committee's feeling or perspective, they didn't encounter this very much in secondary and higher levels of education, so it wouldn't be beneficial for them during their time as they were building out the taxonomy. There are several others who have, and Dave's has been referred to as one of the easiest and most straightforward ones to implement. Actually putting it down into words, there were 2 models that were given: Mager's model and the SMART format. I'll be honest, I wasn't actually positive how to say Mager, so I listened to some videos even from back in the 90s, and that's the way I heard people introduce him, so that's what I'm going with. Mager's model uses the ABCD approach, and that's almost like putting the puzzle pieces together. The objective identifies the audience, identifies the behavior, identifies the condition, identifies the degree, check, 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 and you are done. The SMART format is a little bit more holistic. It has these 5 attributes: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And if all of those are fulfilled, then you're going to have what you want for an objective. There's 2 pieces of that are a little bit specific, identifiable. Measurable, it needs to have a criteria. Time-bound, it needs to have a time frame. Otherwise, it's more holistic. It has to have the specific pieces. It has to be achievable, challenging, but something that students can reach. Relevant, it has to be relevant to students and the organization. To give there, I said it again. Mager's model. Audience can be drawn from the course title, learners in leading meetings. Behavior, we'll be able to develop. So develop is kind of your verb in there. Condition, using an agenda template. The condition is what they will have available during the time that they do the action. The degree of mastery, how well they have to do it, how often they have to do it, every time. That is the end of step 2. Join me next time for step 3.